Hi everyone. Today, with great sorrow, I share a story about the heartbreaking situation in the world where innocent babies are suffering and women are carrying the burden of their families. All right, let's begin this heartbreaking story. Part 1. The Spark of a Storm. Have you ever felt like the world is teetering on the edge of something huge? Something so monumental, it could change the course of history in an instant? Well, this is exactly what happened on a fateful day when Iran launched missile and drone strikes on two of Israel's most iconic cities, Tel Aviv and Haifa. It wasn't just a random attack. No, this was calculated. It was a message, a fierce declaration of power and defiance. The world watched as explosions lit up the sky. The night sky trembled with the impact of missiles, and Tel Aviv was sent into chaos. Imagine the heart-stopping tension that filled the air as sirens blared and people scrambled to take cover. It was more than just an attack, it was a warning. And as the dust settled, the toll was grave. 8 innocent lives lost. But the ripple effects didn't end there. The U.S. Embassy, that symbol of diplomacy and global presence, was severely damaged. That's right. The very place that stands as a bridge between nations was now reduced to rubble. A quote comes to mind in moments like these. In the heart of chaos, a storm is always brewing. It's not the end, it's the beginning of something far greater. Part 2. Israel's retaliation, a show of force. Now just think about this for a second. The world watching, hearts pounding as Israel stands at the brink of a decision that could change everything. What do you do when your enemy launches a full-scale attack, tearing through your cities, causing devastation? Do you cower in fear? Do you retreat, hoping the storm will pass? No. Israel didn't flinch. In the face of such an assault, Israel chose a different path. They chose to rise, to meet the challenge head-on, with a fire that would echo louder than the very missiles that had struck their land. They didn't just respond. They made sure their response would be felt not only by Iran, but by the entire world. Israel chose to send a message that screamed, "We are not broken. We are unyielding." The retaliatory response from Israel was swift, calculated, and precise. No hesitation, no second thoughts. The Israeli military's focus was unshakable. They locked their eyes on the Iranian missile launchers and Revolutionary Guard centers, the heart of the aggression. And with the speed and precision they are known for, they unleashed their airstrikes. These were not just bombs, they were statements of power, of resolve, and of strength. Israel wasn't just bombing military installations. They were demolishing the foundation of an enemy that thought it could push them to the edge. This was more than a mere military reaction. It was a reflection of the resilience Israel has built over decades, a testament to their unwavering spirit, their unbreakable will. The attack on Iran's military infrastructure was a reminder that no matter how much you try to shake them, you cannot break the spirit that rises from the ashes of adversity. You may shake the ground, but you cannot break the spirit that rises from it. These words resonated as Israel's fighter jets soared into the sky, dropping bombs with precision and power. Each strike, each explosion was more than just an attack. It was a declaration that Israel would never back down. Every missile launched was not only a retaliation. It was a symbol of unity, of the unyielding force that binds a nation together when faced with destruction. As the smoke rose from the scorched earth of Iranian missile launchers and the Revolutionary Guard's military bases, the world held its breath. It wasn't just the destructive power of the bombs that left a lasting impact. It was the strength and precision with which they were delivered. It was a lesson for any nation watching. When you strike a nation like Israel, you do not only face their military might, you face a people who have learned to rise from every blow they've ever endured. The air was thick with tension. Would this retaliatory attack spark even greater conflict? Could this turn into something far worse than anyone had anticipated? The questions hung in the air, unanswered for now, as Israel showed its true colors. And as the world watched, one thing became abundantly clear. Israel's resolve was unbreakable, and they were prepared to fight until the end. But even as the smoke cleared, Israel knew this was just the beginning. A single response would not change the outcome of the war. It was a move in the chess game, a display of power, but the next steps would be critical. The airstrikes were a reminder of Israel's capability, but also a statement of what they were willing to do to protect their people, their land, their future. The words of an ancient proverb came to mind in this moment. When a storm comes, do not hide under the ground, but rise with it and stand tall. Israel had risen, and with that, they had shown not only their enemy, but the entire world that no amount of aggression could break their spirit. In that moment, it wasn't just about retaliation. It was about declaring to the world that Israel would fight with everything they had, and they would never give in. So, the question remains, what would Iran do next? Would they accept this powerful response, or would they escalate the situation further? One thing was certain. The world was watching, and Israel had just made its next move. Part 3, the turning point. The air was thick with anticipation. It was as if the entire world was holding its breath, caught in the delicate balance of a conflict that could tip the scales at any moment. Every eye was fixed on the Middle East. The question on everyone's mind was this: would Israel's retaliatory move escalate the conflict further? Would this unleash a chain of events that would plunge the region into chaos, tearing through the fragile peace that had held for so long? The world waited with bated breath, knowing that the next few moments could shape the future of not just Israel and Iran, but the entire region. As the dust settled from the initial strikes, it was clear that this wasn't just a typical military response. No, Israel's actions were far more deliberate than that. They weren't simply reacting to an attack. They were sending a message, and they were doing so with a cold, calculated precision. Every airstrike that shook the ground carried with it a deeper purpose, a purpose far beyond just retaliation. Israel's military might have been on full display, but this was more than an exhibition of power. This was strategy in motion. Israel's leadership had understood that in times of conflict, mere defense wouldn't suffice. Defense alone would never secure the safety and future of their people. No, this was about something far more profound, crippling their enemy's ability to act in the future. This was about sending a clear signal, not just to Iran, but to the entire region. Israel's resolve wasn't just built on their military might. It was built on their ability to outthink their opponents. And so, Israel's airstrikes weren't aimed at random targets. No, they were meticulously planned. Each bomb dropped on strategic locations designed to paralyze Iran's war-making capabilities. These weren't just military bases. They were the nerve centers of the Iranian regime's ability to wage further conflict. The missile launchers, the command centers, the Revolutionary Guard bases, each one a critical piece of Iran's machinery, and each one destroyed with precision. The underlying message was crystal clear. You may have thrown the first stone, but we have built an unshakable foundation beneath us. It was as if Israel had quietly and confidently drawn a line in the sand, saying, "We will not be moved. We will not falter." Every action has consequences, and every decision will be met with an equal, calculated response. And just as the missile strikes created shockwaves across the region, Israel's response created a ripple effect that echoed far beyond the immediate conflict. It was a wake-up call to the world, a reminder that in this high-stakes game, Israel was not just playing defense, but also dictating the tempo of the confrontation. With every airstrike, Israel wasn't just inflicting damage. They were altering the course of the entire conflict. They were making it abundantly clear that no one could simply dictate terms to them. They were not a passive participant in this global struggle. They were an active force, shaping the narrative, defining the boundaries, and driving the story forward. Israel had shown its strength, but it was also making a bold statement. You can shake the foundation, but you will never break it. And so, as the region held its breath, the response from Israel sent shockwaves through the Middle East. The geopolitical landscape was forever altered. Israel's calculated strike had sent ripples of doubt and fear throughout the region. Countries that had once remained on the sidelines now found themselves forced to choose sides. Allies became uncertain, and adversaries grew wary. The balance of power had shifted. As the dust settled and the world slowly began to comprehend the full extent of Israel's actions, the reality of the situation began to sink in. Israel was not just defending itself. It was asserting its place in a world that constantly sought to undermine it. The message Israel had delivered wasn't just about military might. It was about resilience, about standing firm in the face of adversity, about refusing to be intimidated. But as with any major turning point in history, the consequences of this moment would be far-reaching. The world, now fully aware of Israel's resolve, was left to wonder, what would come next? Would the region descend further into chaos? Or was this the catalyst for a new order? Would the response from Israel serve as a deterrent to Iran, or would it provoke even more fierce retaliation? The tension hung in the air, thick and palpable. The turning point had been reached, but the journey was far from over. The next chapter of this saga was about to unfold, and the world could only watch as it did. Part 4. The Global Repercussions. A World on Edge. As the dust of Israel's retaliatory strikes settled and the smoke from the destruction began to dissipate, something else became abundantly clear. The entire world was now watching. What had started as a localized conflict had transformed into something much larger, much more significant. This was no longer just about the tensions between Israel and Iran. The global ramifications of this moment were unfolding before everyone's eyes, and nations around the world could no longer remain passive observers. They had to choose sides, and in choosing, they were forced to confront the bigger picture, the delicate balance of power that could be tipped by this very conflict. Leaders, analysts, and diplomats across the globe found themselves grappling with one undeniable truth. This wasn't just about two nations clashing. This was about the balance of power, the fragility of peace, and the very future of global politics. What began as a regional dispute had the potential to set the stage for a larger, more complex geopolitical struggle. The tension was thick in the air, as countries realized the consequences of standing on the sidelines. This was not just a moment in history, it was a defining moment. And history would remember those who chose to act, to influence, to shape the outcome. The shockwaves from the conflict weren't confined to the Middle East alone. Oh no, they spread far and wide. The ripple effect surged across continents, reaching every corner of the globe. From the United States to Europe, from Asia to Africa, nations felt the tremors of this moment. Economies began to react, markets fluctuated, and diplomatic channels buzzed with frantic activity. Countries with no direct involvement in the conflict found themselves caught up in its impact. Whether through oil price hikes, shifts in diplomatic alliances, or changes in security policy, the ripples from Israel's airstrikes had reached far beyond the immediate battlefield. This was the nature of global politics. A single spark in one part of the world could send flames across oceans. The question on everyone's mind was, would this be the start of a larger war? Would the tensions between Israel and Iran lead to a chain reaction that could draw in more nations, more powers into the conflict? Or would it remain contained, a brief flare of violence in a volatile region? For many, this was a reminder of a truth that had often been forgotten in the ebb and flow of diplomacy and global affairs. In times of crisis, nations are faced with a choice to either rise together, to stand united in the face of adversity, or to crumble apart, divided by fear, self-interest, and hesitation. The impact of this conflict would not just be measured in military terms. It would be measured in the alliances formed, the decisions made, and the actions taken, or in some cases, the lack thereof. Leaders around the world knew that in moments like these, their decisions could tip the scales of history. One wrong move, one moment of hesitation, and the world could slip into a far more dangerous reality. In the midst of all this chaos, there's a timeless truth that remains relevant. History doesn't remember the ones who stayed silent. It remembers the ones who dared to speak, to act, to rise. These words rang loud and clear as the global community found itself standing at a crossroads. Would they remain silent, hoping the storm would pass, or would they rise to meet the challenge, to take a stand in the face of overwhelming uncertainty? As the world collectively held its breath, the ripple effects of Israel's retaliation continued to unfold. Countries began to take sides, some aligning with Israel, others with Iran, and some choosing the path of neutrality, hoping to avoid being dragged into a larger conflict. The lines were being drawn, and alliances were being tested. The balance of power in the Middle East, and by extension, in the world, was being reshaped in real time. The global impact wasn't just seen in political or military moves. It was felt on a human level as well. The everyday people around the world, from the bustling streets of New York to the quiet villages of Africa, felt the tension. News outlets were saturated with updates, while social media exploded with commentary and debate. Everyone had an opinion, everyone had a stake, and everyone knew that this conflict had the potential to change the world as they knew it. But as nations began to make their moves, as alliances shifted and positions were taken, the one undeniable truth that emerged was this: we live in a world that is far more interconnected than we often realize. One nation's struggle has the power to affect every other nation. This wasn't just a regional issue, it was a global issue. And the decisions made in the coming days, weeks, and months would shape the course of history for generations to come. Would the world rise together in unity, as some hoped? Or would it spiral into chaos, with each nation retreating into its corner, divided and afraid? Only time would tell. But one thing was certain: the global repercussions of this conflict would resonate for years to come. The echoes of these moments would be felt across every continent, in every corner of the world. The stage had been set, and now the world waited to see who would rise to meet the challenge. Part 5, A New Dawn. As the smoke from the retaliatory strikes cleared and the dust began to settle, a question lingered in the air. Where does this all lead? Is this the breaking point, the final chapter in a long and bitter struggle? Or is this just the beginning of something much larger, a conflict that could shape the future of the entire region, and perhaps the world? The tension hung thick, unanswered, because in the wake of every conflict, there's always uncertainty, always that nagging question of what comes next. But one thing is clear beyond any doubt. The resilience of nations, their will to persevere, will always be tested in times of conflict. It's in moments like these that the true strength of a nation is revealed, not in the silence of diplomacy, but in the roar of defiance in the face of destruction. Both Iran and Israel, though separated by deep ideological divides and a history soaked in blood, have shown us something universal. Resilience and power are not defined solely by military might. No, true power lies in resolve, in the ability to stand tall when the world is crumbling around you, to rise when every ounce of your being tells you to fall, to continue fighting even when the odds are overwhelmingly stacked against you. In times of war, in times of uncertainty, in moments when the very earth beneath your feet seems to tremble with every blow, resilience is what keeps you going. Resolve is what pushes you forward, even when the path is unclear and the journey seems impossible. These two nations, despite their fierce opposition and years of hostility, have taught us an invaluable lesson. They have shown us that true strength doesn't come from the weapons you wield, but from the strength of your will. Israel's response to the missile strikes, precise and calculated, was not just about retaliation. It was a testament to their unwavering resolve. A message to the world that no matter what happens, no matter how powerful the force coming against them, they will stand tall. Similarly, Iran, despite its own struggles, has demonstrated that its resilience is not to be underestimated. They continue to push forward, refusing to back down. This is not just a war of weapons. It is a war of wills, and both nations are locked in a battle to prove that their spirit cannot be broken. But this conflict is not isolated. It is a mirror of the larger struggles that exist within the hearts of all people, all nations. Every person has faced adversity. Every nation has endured its own battles, whether they be on the battlefield or within the heart. In those moments when the world seems to collapse around us, we find out what we are truly made of. We find that strength we never knew we had, that power to rise, to keep fighting, to keep moving forward despite all odds. This is the true test of humanity, not how we fight, but how we endure, how we face the chaos and refuse to let it consume us. As we leave this story behind, as we move forward from this chapter of history, remember this. In the face of adversity, we find the strength we never knew we had. And it is in these moments that we realize the battle is not just fought on the ground. It is fought in the heart. It is in our hearts that we find the courage to face the impossible, to stand up when the world tells us to stay down. It is in these moments of trial and turmoil that we discover who we really are. The journey is far from over. The conflict between Israel and Iran may have set the stage for something much larger, but the question remains, will the world rise from the ashes of this struggle, stronger and more united? Or will we allow ourselves to be torn apart by the divisions and fears that seem to plague us? The answer lies in our actions, our decisions, our resolve, and our ability to endure. The battle is not just fought on the battlefield. It is fought in every heart, in every mind, in every decision we make. As we move forward, let us remember the lessons learned from these nations and their unyielding spirits. Let us carry their resilience with us, for it is in times of darkness that we find our true light. Let us rise together, united in our resolve, knowing that our strength is not measured by the force we exert, but by the courage we show in the face of adversity. With that said, thanks for watching, and until next time, stay strong, stay resilient, and keep rising.